I thought I had become a reader, but 2025 proved me wrong. This was my second year of reading, and in my first, I read around 15 books, and that number did something to me. I started believing I had become a reader and that I know everything about reading now. And from now on, I won't stop reading. But the complete opposite happened. In the entire year of 2025, I managed to finish only 4 books. And that number kept bothering me for weeks because every time I look back and think about, did I even try to read? And the answer always was, yes, I did. But then why? When I look at the numbers, they tell a different story. And I got the answers when I looked at the first title I finished this year, A Little Life. I started reading A Little Life in the August of 2024 and kept reading it till April of 2025. So for 8 whole months, I was reading this one book. At that point, I didn't really want to read it, but I had this idea that if you started reading a story, you need to know how the story is going to end. And that was the biggest mistake I made this year. And I'm not saying that the book is bad. It's just that I just can't handle reading abuse. And that's the only reason I couldn't bring myself to read that book every single day. And that's the reason why it took me 8 months to read that. And you know what is the worst part? That even after finishing A Little Life, for 2 whole months, I couldn't bring myself to read anything else. Or should I say that that's how good the book is? It will make you so uncomfortable that you won't be able to read anything for a while. So, in the last week of those 2 months when I didn't read anything, I decided I need to read something that would remind me why I started reading in the first place. And like every new reader, I decided I am ready to read a classic. And after watching videos after videos to what should I read, from what I should start my classic journey, I stumbled upon this short from Jordan Peterson where he spoke about crime and punishment, and I was really intrigued by. So I started reading Crime and Punishment, and even though it took me 3 months to read the book, it didn't felt like I wasted my time. I really like how Dostoevsky writes pages out of pages on just one topic. And you know what's the funny thing? After reading 50 pages for the first day, I took a month off. I didn't read anything. I just thought about the book, the way it's written, the way Dostoevsky pursued. It just drops you there. That here's the story, here's the guy. This is going to happen, but that's not the whole point. The topic, the main purpose of this book is to discuss how he's going to cope, deal with it after doing the incident. Doing the deed is not the main part of the book. And when I finished reading Crime and Punishment, it was already 1.5 year since I started reading. And till this point, reading Hindi never really crossed my mind. But around this time somewhere, I heard one of my friends speak about Gunaho Ka Devta. And the way he described the book, I mean, he didn't really describe the book itself. Told me. He just told me how he felt when he read the book. I mean, he told me he read the book twice in a week, and as a beginner who had never read anything twice, I just wanted to know what's in it that he read it twice in a week. And I started reading it. It turned out that I didn't really enjoy it that much to read it twice in a week, but it was a great book. And if I have to describe the whole book in just one sentence, I would say it reminded me of watching the sun seeping through the tree leaves. That's how I felt after reading the book because of the main character, Sudha, how lonely she became. There is so much to talk about the book because first half of the book, I just couldn't see why people would call this book a classic. But when I reached the end, there were this loneliness you could feel. And these are the all three fiction books that I read this year. And the last book that I read this year is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's a non-fiction book. It's about leadership, how Start With Why discusses why and how people become loyal customers. And I think it's pretty interesting book. And I found it so interesting that I started reading another book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, I think. And I think that's the best thing a nonfiction book can do to you. If it can make you curious enough to find out more about the topic, then I think it's a pretty good book. And these are the all 4 books that I read this year. And there are still books that I started this year but didn't manage to finish. I started reading It by Stephen King, and it has the best opening I have read so far. I mean, I have watched the movies 3 or 4 years ago, but reading it feels way more cinematic. And even though there are so many cultural barriers that I cannot overcome, I have to search some words' meaning to find out what they look like. After searching it, after watching it, it's give you the nostalgic feel because we have grown watching Hollywood movies, so it's not that hard to imagine. So these are all the books that I read this year. Do let me know in the comments what are the books that you read this year. And with that, I will end this video and I hope you are reading something that you really enjoy.